And think, folks, this program was rumored to be firing its coach at the end of the 2015 season, and here we are just a few months later and on the cusp of a #1 recruiting class. Talking LSU football right here on Mark Rogers TV with Billy Gomilla from SB Nation's And the Valley Shook. Billy, it's always a pleasure to have you on. We talked about this before we hit the record button. I usually ask the question, who are those real studs, those top recruits coming in? But when I ask you that question, you've got some filtering to do, a little editing to do. So who are those guys that are getting Tiger fans really excited at this point?
Yeah, well, this class is heavy on defensive front seven, which really was an area that LSU was a little thin at, specifically defensive tackle. They really loaded up there's about 4 guys at that position here. The headliner is Rashard Lawrence from Neville High School in Monroe. Real big-time commitment, 5-star defensive tackle, real active kid. Really kind of the LSU prototype defensive tackle, that a little on the shorter side, under 6'3", right at around 295, 300 pounds, real quick, real active, high motor kid, kind of in the mold of the Booger McFarlands and the Chad Lavallées and the Glenn Dorsey's and the Kyle Williams and the Drake Nevis's and all the, most of the great tackles that have really come through here in the last couple of years. You've got him, linebacker Michael Divinity, another 5-star, I think, in the 247 rankings, who is an early enrollee and is going to have a really, really good shot to start this year because LSU is just dreadfully thin at linebacker. I think he's going to make either 4 or 5 scholarship linebackers in the spring. Getting Kendall Beckwith back was pretty big key. But Divinity will have a really good shot to start. Ditto his classmates, Erick Fowler and Rashawn Thornton, both guys who are going to kind of defensive end linebacker tweener types. Wouldn't surprise me if Erick Fowler winds up at middle linebacker. He's kind of a big thumper type of guy. You've also got Edwin Alexander, another big tackle, another guy I expect to play a lot early on. Saivion Smith, the 5-star corner, maybe winds up at safety, not sure, kind of a ball hawk type, which LSU really needs. They need that guy that can get his hands on the ball in the secondary. That was kind of as good as the secondary was this year. That's one thing they're kind of missing. So if he can give that, I think that'll go a long way.
All right, this is typically a key question for a number of programs across the country with 6 days remaining to National Signing Day on February 3rd. There's a couple guys out there typically for most programs that they really are dying to get into the fold to make or break the class. Not so much for LSU, but still, who are those guys that are listing LSU on the short list that if you bring them in, wow, look out?
Well, for LSU, there's still the 5-star in-state cornerback Christian Fulton from Rummel High School in New Orleans. He's, I believe, going to visit Florida this weekend. I'm not sure on that. I know he visited LSU last weekend. He's very high on the Tigers. Most of us expect him to commit to LSU. Him, another big-time cornerback, Trayvon Mullen from Florida, is a guy that LSU's been on, and there's been some momentum towards him coming in as well. They only have a handful of spots left. The other big question is going to be quarterback. Frankly, that surprise with LSU, it's kind of hasn't worked out. They had Philippe Franks, big time prospect, committed for a long time, and he kind of left them at the altar in December, and they were kind of left scrambling. And there's a local kid here named Lindsey Scott. He's actually the son of the famous Georgia receiver. Grew up locally, won a state title through put up about 5,000 yards of offense. Kind of an undersized kid. He's only about 5'11", but dual threat quarterback. Super sharp kid. Actually has a full ride offer from Harvard. So that's kind of the question: is will LSU be able to land him, because he's got a lot of non-football options, and I think his other major football offer is the University of Maryland. So LSU's kind of late on him, but they're trying to make a big push. He's going to visit this weekend, try and see if they can't lock up. And right now at quarterback, but you need a high school kid, because in a few years you're going to be down to Justin McMillan, who was kind of a lightly recruited project guy in the 2015 class. and whoever else you get from here on out. So you need to make sure you have some bodies, so you have some depth going forward. They really need to make sure they sign a high school quarterback.
Okay, it's an LSU recruiting class that is ranked right there in the top in the nation, and it's rather surprising, not because of the talent there in state, but the situation. If you think back just a few months ago, you would have thought that the class might be compromised at some point, but Les Miles and his staff have come back very strong in bringing back the best talent in the nation to LSU. Billy Gomilla from And the Valley Shook joining us to break down the LSU recruiting class. Hopefully at some point after National Signing Day, once those guys on the fence have made a decision, we can pull you back in, Billy.
Absolutely.